week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim was heart-rippingly good. And yes, that is a pun on the badass scene at the end of this week's episode. And what I loved most about this week's episode is that it almost seemed like it was going to be sort of an uplifting, almost like holiday-esque episode, especially due to the tone of it all, especially with the falling snow and everything. You're like, oh, this is perfect time for the Christmas season. And then by the end of the episode, it all becomes clear that this is going to be a very sad but memorable episode. This is essentially the Kana episode, the one that she's going to be remembered for. And there was a lot of build-up to it, but that final scene at the end was just heartbreaking. And it was also really badass at the same time. What I will say is, the character of Kana, I'm still not quite sure how I feel about her. I still think that she's a little stalkerish and a little creepy, especially the fact, you know, she's stealing Shinichi's hair and tying it around her finger and everything and then kissing it. That's kind of strange. It's weird, her odd obsession with him, but a lot of that does have to do with her very strange powers. And over the course of the episode, Migi learns that she's actually giving off this signal, which is actually attracting the other parasite creatures. And this is going to intensify the danger, so Shinichi's going to try and meet with her, and he does something really bold, something that I really didn't expect. And he waited for Migi to go to sleep, and then he told Kana everything about the parasites. He put it all on the table, which I think is just really insane. And he even told Migi that he did that, and Migi took it surprisingly well. And this could have something to do with the fact that little by little, you can see that Shinichi is becoming slightly more dominant in the role that they have. Because, you know, as the series has gone on, obviously, you've seen the evolutions of their characters. You know, he started out very meek, and now he's basically in charge, especially at the end of this week's episode, which you can even hear the surprise in Migi's voice when he takes command at the end. And I just thought that was really clever, and great work from the voice actors of the show as well. But there's this one scene where they're getting ready to meet up at the very end of the episode, and Kana decides to ditch her cell phone, and she wants to rely on her crazy abilities to actually sense Shinichi, which is a terrible idea, because there was a scene earlier in the episode where she thought she was going to run into him, and it ended up being someone else, and it was really creepy as shit. And so she decides to do it again. She goes into this abandoned warehouse-type building, and there's this one creepy, disgusting parasite guy, and he's eating this human. He finds her, he starts to give chase, and right as she runs into Izumi, she gets a freaking spiked tentacle right through the chest, killing her nearly instantly. And this is when Shinichi just goes insane. And I love it because he tells Migi to go on the defense. Usually Migi's the one who goes full offense here, and he just runs in, blocks all the attacks with Migi, and frickin' runs his arm right through this parasite's chest, slamming him through a wall. And then when they cut back, you see he actually has its heart still beating in his hand, and then he just throws it to the ground. It is an intensely awesome scene, and of course it's heartbreaking because he has to run over, find Kana, who dies right there in his arms. The episode ends with them being at her funeral, and of course the scene is really emotional because of all the things that Shinichi's been going through, his now lack of emotion. He no longer has the ability to cry. He can't even cry about this. And there's also a scene with Mitsuo, who's that one gang guy who had like an obsession with Kana as well. And he was really pissed, and Shinichi basically just let him beat on him for a little bit, and then he just ended it all with one really hardcore punch. And then they cut to the credits, and I really liked how they showed all the scenes with him in the forest, slamming his head up against a tree, and he was trying to make himself cry, essentially, but eventually he drew blood, and that's when he was finally reassured that he is human, and it finally ends with him actually smiling with blood on his face. It's a very nice, heartbreaking, and somewhat uplifting scene at the same time. So what's the rundown on this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim? It was really good. It was really slow in the beginning, though. That's really my only big complaint about this episode. But everything else I thought was handled really well. I love the tension of the series. It just keeps getting crazier and crazier. And I didn't even mention this, but I love the scene at the very end when Shinichi is actually leaving the funeral. There's those two government agents who've been sort of following all of the parasites, and they really know what's going on. And, you know, obviously now they're going to be keeping tabs on Shinichi a lot more because he's been involved with 2 events where people were killed by parasites. So they have to follow him at this point, which means that their organization is just going to get dragged in. And then you have those other groups of parasites who are basically trying to build like their own like living fortress and food source. And that's really creepy in and of itself. And then there's the whole Tamiya Ryoko thing. There's so many little elements to this which are really surprising. I thought this was just going to be like the monster of the week. But there's a surprising amount of depth to this series. This episode, though, is going to be remembered for Kana and Kana's death, which was very sudden. And I honestly didn't think she was going to get killed. I really thought that, you know, Shinichi was going to get in there and save the day. But, you know, you could almost tell at that exact moment, as soon as Shinichi ran through the door, you could see the horror on his face in that he knew he was too late. There was nothing he could do at that point. And just the scene where he went nuts was so great just because of the animation. It was really good. You could just feel the intensity and the weight behind the attack when he slammed into the wall and just ripping the heart out. That's just freaking awesome. That's some Kali Ma shit right there. So this was another great episode of the series, which was action-packed and had some really great character moments and had some really great art design, like in all the backgrounds and everything. Whenever it started snowing, I just couldn't help but think, wow, this is just perfect for the Christmas season, being that it is Christmas Eve after all. So this was a great episode. Great animation. Awesome action. The death of Kana was handled very well, and the series can only go up from here. It just keeps getting better. It was a little slow in the first half. Otherwise, it was still a really entertaining episode. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 5. You should definitely check it out if you are following the series. And remember, guys, Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays, see you later. Thank you guys for watching my review. If you guys liked this video, make sure and give it a thumbs up and hit that like button. And before you leave, please tell me what you thought about this week's episode of Parasyte the Maxim in the comments section below. How did you feel about the death of Kana, and what do you want to see from the rest of Parasyte the Maxim? Remember, guys, if you have not subscribed to our channel, you can do that by clicking on the channel icon right up here. You can also follow us on Facebook and on Twitter. Merry Christmas, Happy Holidays.